Welcome, everyone. This is the podcast guesting masterclass intensive. I am your host, Jessica Rhodes. I'm the founder and co-owner of Interview Connections, and I am excited to be here with you. Happy holidays, happy new year, happy end of the year. For those of you who don't know me yet or are new to the Interview Connections community, just want to quickly introduce myself. I founded Interview Connections in 2000 years of experience booking podcast interviews. So if you're interested in podcast guesting, you have come to the right people. You have come to the right place. We are going to teach you everything we can in the next 2 hours from what we have learned from almost 10 years of experience booking podcasts. A little bit of background about me personally. I kind of fell into this business. I started as an entrepreneur when I was 25. I wanted to be home with my baby, who is now going to be 10 in March. And it was really a desire to be a stay-at-home, work-at-home mom that I went to my dad, who's a business coach. His name is Jim Palmer. And I said, Dad, I want to be home when the baby comes. What should I do for work? And he said, well, you could be a virtual assistant. I had been working in nonprofit. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know anything about the world of online business. And he said, I'll be your first client. I will show you how to do it. So that was the beginning. I started working with my dad as his virtual assistant. And one of the first tasks that he asked me to do for him was to book him as a guest on podcasts. He had already had his podcast. It's now called Dream Business Radio. And he said that going on other people's podcasts was a great way for him to be speaking to targeted audiences, getting visibility to ideal clients, hundreds, thousands of people at a time without leaving his home office. Pretty great. So he said, I need somebody to help me get booked on the right podcast. So I said, well, I can figure that out. I've been knocking on doors for 6 years, raising money for the environment. I can certainly book podcast interviews. And as I was booking podcast interviews, I learned that nobody else was booking podcast interviews. Podcast hosts would respond to my pitches saying, wait, well, who are you? I've never had somebody pitch a guest to me before. I've never had somebody recommend somebody to be on my show. What do you do? And in these first few months of being a new mom, being a business owner, I realized that I wanted to be able to scale. I wanted to be able to work with more people. And so that is what started Interview Connections. I went from being a general virtual assistant with my dad as a client and a couple of his friends as a client to founding the first ever podcast booking agency, Interview Connections. Today, we're a multi-seven-figure company with over 20 full-time employees. We have around 200 clients that we represent as guests on podcasts. We book thousands of podcast interviews a year, and we teach these masterclasses for free to teach as many business owners as possible how to tap into the power of podcast guesting. We have friends here on this Zoom call from Australia, from Ireland, from the UK, all across the US, Canada, and you all have the opportunity with podcast guesting to be known by people all over the world. So I'm incredibly excited to be teaching this to you, and I'm very excited to show you how you can get visibility to prospects, to clients, to new followers and fans by simply opening up your computer and being interviewed on a podcast. So welcome, everyone. Introduce yourself. On a personal note, as I said, I'm a mom. I now have 2 kids. My son, who is going to be 10 in March. My daughter, Lucy, is 7. We live in North Smithfield, Rhode Island. I have 4 chickens, 2 cats, 2 gerbils, a fish, and a husband. So that's a little bit about me personally. We are honored to be teaching you. So as you are joining from around the world, make sure you comment in the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. As I said, podcast guesting is a way to get visibility globally. So let us know where in the world you are tuning in from. Connect with our team. So I am here with you on camera. I'm the founder of Interview Connections, but by no means do I do any of this alone. We have an incredible team at Interview Connections. My business partner, Margie Feldtune, is our CEO. We have an incredible team of booking agents and podcast researchers who are working with our clients right now. And we have Matt and Sammy here on Zoom. They are here to support you, answer your questions. If you need to leave and get the replay, they're here to help you with that. So just a big shout out to Team Interview Connections. If you need anything, you can DM either Matt Delisle or Sammy IC here on Zoom, or email us at support@interviewconnections.com. Okay, that's about all the fluff I have for you today. So I hope you could handle that. First, let's just get present. I want everyone to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Answer this question for me in the chat. Up until now, why have you not been getting interviewed on podcasts? Up until now, why have you not been getting interviewed on podcasts? Let me know that in the chat. Great. I haven't been pitching. I don't know where to start. Haven't asked. No strategy. This is great. We're going to help you. We're going to clear all of this out. We're going to disappear these roadblocks and make sure that you have that clear roadmap. You know how to get started. So, perfect. All right. Again, as I mentioned in the beginning, grab a piece of paper, a pen, open up a Google Doc. I do recommend that you not multitask. You will likely only focus on one thing at a time. So if you do want to be here, close out distractions. You can get back to your work afterwards. Focus, be here so you can get the most of this information. All right. So in today's intensive, I am going to be teaching you how to build a strong foundation so you don't waste time on the wrong shows. I'm going to tell you about what a podcast one sheet is and what you need to have on your one sheet. We're going to talk about setting clear goals for your podcast guesting strategy. That's a really important part to being able to run full force and seeing amazing results. And we're going to talk about how to close sales as a podcast guest, how to actually use podcast guesting to generate warm, qualified leads and ideal clients in your business. At the end, I'm going to be joined by my good friend, Laura Wright. She's a master sales coach. She's going to be coming on to tell you how she has been closing multiple six figures in sales by podcast guesting. So we are recording and we will be posting the replay this afternoon on the replay page. So if you do have to leave, I hope you don't, but if you do, we will be sending out the replay, and the replay page will be live until Tuesday at midnight. So you have until Tuesday at midnight to watch the full session, watch the full intensive again, or rewatch it or watch it for the first time. All right, let's get started. So the first step to having a successful podcast guesting strategy is to set clear goals for why you are doing this. Likely something inspired you to be here, or you wouldn't have logged on to this Zoom call. You wouldn't have clicked play on this video. Something brought you here, but you may not have clear goals yet for the specific results that you want to get from podcast guesting. And that's the first and most important step to this strategy, having clarity around what you want to get out of podcast guesting. So put it in the chat right now. What are your goals for podcast guesting? So going on podcasts as a guest, look at your business. What are the results that you want to see in your business by being on podcasts? Some examples of goals that we recommend that we have our clients that are increased brand awareness. So just generally being known by more people, making sure that your brand is visible to more audiences and more people. Let me know, have you been growing by word of mouth and referral? A lot of entrepreneurs that come to us say, I've been growing by word of mouth and referral, but I need to expand out. If I'm going to grow to the next level, I need more people to know me outside of my existing network. So simply increasing brand awareness is a great goal. You know that by getting interviewed on podcasts, you will have on every interview hundreds or thousands of people who now know who you are that didn't know you before that interview. So increased brand awareness is a great goal. More warm, qualified leads. Sometimes a business owner will say, I have lots of leads. I am running ads, but they are really cold and they're not super qualified. So by going on podcasts, you can set a goal to get more warm, qualified leads. What does that mean? A warm lead is somebody that is coming to you already having trust in you. By hearing you on a podcast, by hearing your story, by getting to know you, by hearing that you're an expert, by learning from you, getting value from you, that lead, that prospective client has more trust in you than somebody who sees your website, scans your services info, and reaches out for a call. Warmer leads are easier to close than a cold lead who's like kind of has their guard up, is searching around, gathering information. So maybe you want more warm, qualified leads. Another goal is to close more high ticket clients. So who here has a business where you are selling a high ticket service? Whether that's $5,000, $10,000, $25,000, maybe $100,000, who has clients who are, by definition, high ticket? One client is worth, multi-thousands of dollars in your business. Perfect. You need to be podcast guesting. High ticket buyers want to know that you are an authority and you are an expert, and they want to know that they can trust you. I know this because I am a high ticket buyer. When Margie and I invest in an agency, in a coach, and an advisor, we are investing at a high level, and we want to know that the person we're working with is an expert and they know their stuff and we can trust them. So when we hear that person on a podcast, we now have the trust to know that we can make that high ticket investment. Another reason that you want to be podcast guesting if you have a high ticket offering is the host of the show is often an ideal client. This is something that Laura Wright will touch on. She talks about how as a sales coach, when she's on a podcast and the host of the show is an ideal client, she will listen to hear if that host starts asking her questions in the interview that are clearly they want to know. They're like, so for example, if a business owner, the whole asking for a friend thing, listen for that. If you can tell that the host is asking questions that they're personally interested in, that should set off an alarm in your head that says this host is now interested in me. And that's an opportunity for you to guide that host into a separate consultation call. We have clients all the time. We've experienced it as well as business owners where the host of the show will end up booking a sales consultation call and becoming a client. So that if you have a high ticket offering, definitely focus on podcast guesting and really look at the host of the show. When you sell high ticket, you don't need massive high volume of leads. You need a smaller quantity of really ideal dream clients. Another great goal for podcast guesting is to increase the number of followers that you have online, whether that's growing your email list, building up your Instagram following, getting more connections on LinkedIn so you have a stronger presence there. Whatever more followers online looks like for you, that is a really great goal. We just signed on a client about an hour ago, and she has a very successful business in dentistry. She has 3 dental practices, and she's building this new business where she needs visibility online because she's very well known in her local area with her 3 thriving dental practices. But now she needs visibility online to people that don't know her outside of her local area. So you could really have a clear goal of, I need to grow visibility globally outside of my local community, and podcast guesting can do that for you. So let me know, after hearing some of those goals, what is your goal for podcast guesting? What do you want podcast guesting to do for you in your business in 2023? Put it in the chat. All right. The next thing you need to know with podcast guesting is your target audience. You have to have clarity on who your target audience is, because if you do not, you won't know what shows to go on. There will be like throwing spaghetti at the wall. So some ways that you get clear on your target audience is your ideal client. Number one, who is your ideal client? I want to know demographic, psychographic, like know your ideal client. Who is that dream client that you want to work with? And this is something that you can do to really attract your ideal client to you. Like, know who they are. Who do you love working with? Don't be general, like get super, super specific on who your dream client is that you want to work with them, and know who that is, because then you can focus on podcasts where shows that are targeting your ideal client. Referral partners. So when you're going on podcasts, you can be going on shows that are speaking to the types of people that typically refer business to you. So at Interview Connections, now our ideal clients and our referral partners tend to be one and the same. Coaches are our ideal client, and a lot of coaches refer to us. So when I go on a show targeting coaches, I'm like, great, this is perfect, because if they're not interested in our services, they will likely refer business to us, because now they know me, they like me, they trust me, and they know that I'm an expert in what I'm talking about. So understand who your ideal client is and understand who your referral partners tend to be, so you can target those different types of shows. We have some speakers here. Who here is a speaker? You speak live on stage, you do virtual speaking, you want to be doing more speaking. We've got friends here that we met in Dublin at the Global Speakers Summit. So let me know if you're a speaker. One of your target audiences can be people that would book you to speak. So if you're a speaker and you're a consultant, like you have people that hire you to coach them, to consult with them, to run workshops, but then you're also, another revenue stream for you is being booked and paid to speak. One of your target audiences could be the, HR rep that books people to come in and speak at the company. That's one target audience. And then another target audience could be the individual that hires you to be their coach. So those are two different target audiences, and there are different types of shows that are targeting each of those audiences. So you want to keep in mind all of the types of people that you can be speaking to on podcasts. So people that can book you to speak is a great target audience to look at. And then, of course, people who can connect you with any of the above types of listeners. All right. So that's, again, we talked about having clear goals and knowing your target audience. Number 3, you need to have a mindset and a commitment to be all in and serve. You will not be successful as a podcast guest if you're just in it for you and what you're going to get out of it. You have to know that podcasting is about providing value. That's why podcasts are free to listen to, and that's why they are not a pay-to-play medium. This is earned media because we podcast hosts and guests are passionate about providing value, because there is an understanding and a mindset in podcast guesting that when I give a lot of value, there is that power of reciprocity. You want to focus on being a giver and knowing that you are there to serve and to provide as much value as possible. Don't hold back. You don't want to go on to a podcast interview and think, okay, I only want to give them a few tips because I want them to come work with me to get the rest. Like when I do these masterclasses, when I go on podcasts, I say as much as I can in the time that is allotted. I don't hold back. So don't hold back. Be there to serve, to provide value, to be a giver. Our client, Daniela Salek, is incredible. She, has a line out the door of people that want to work with her. And she goes into every podcast interview, not at all questioning, is this the right bid? Is this host going to work with me? Are the listeners? She just goes in there and she focuses on such an amazing way of being where people are just magnetically attracted to her because she's there to serve and she's there to provide value. When you focus on that way of being, you will attract people who just want to work with you. So focus on that mindset and that way of being. All right. Next, you need to have a podcast one sheet. Tactically, this is something you have to have in place when you're podcast guesting. We make this for our clients. This is something that we put together in the onboarding process when we're working with a client. So if you are interested in working with us, don't feel like you have to do this yourself. When you are going on podcasts, so when we're pitching our clients, we always attach a podcast one sheet to our pitches, because the podcast one sheet, it's this one pager, it's a PDF. It is a little bit different than a press kit. So I'll kind of go over the differences. So a podcast one sheet, I coined this term in 2013 because when I was pitching my dad, and me and my dad were like, okay, we need to get you on podcasts. What do hosts need to see in order to book you? And I was writing up a pitch, but then in my pitch, it's a narrative. This is, his story. This is what he can tell your audience. But the host needs like that snapshot to identify who is the guest, what's their bio, what can I ask them? So your one sheet has your bio written in third person. This is very important. Do not write your bio in first person because a host cannot read your bio as an introduction if it's in first person. So your bio is in third person. Your one sheet also needs to have interview topics. So 3 to 5 topics that show the host some broader angles that they could take with you in an interview. And then it needs to have suggested interview questions. Feed the host questions. Tell them what you want them to ask you. This will set you up for success because you want to be having interviews featuring you produced so that you are being spotlighted in the way that you want to be spotlighted. So write interview questions that the host can ask you. A lot of hosts will ask you the questions on your one sheet, and then they'll ask follow-up questions and ask questions that they have on their mind that they're curious about. The reason you want to do this is your goal is to make the host job easier. One of the hardest parts about doing a podcast and interviewing people is coming up with questions. So when someone gives me the questions, I'm a happy girl. It makes my life easier. It saves me time. And then it ensures that the guest is being asked the questions that they want to talk about. So you want to write questions on your one sheet that the host can ask you. So a couple of do's and don'ts with your podcast one sheet topics and questions. Avoid questions that are super self-serving and all about you. All right. You are going on podcasts to provide value and to be of service to the highest and best good for everyone who's hearing that interview. So make sure the questions are communicating value to the audience and the host. Be specific so that you stand out as a unique and interesting guest. There are a lot of other people who know what you know, whether you're a marketing consultant or an agency owner or a business coach. There's a lot of other agency owners. There's a lot of other business coaches. So make sure your topics aren't super general and vague. Make them specific enough so it's clear that they're unique to you. Many hosts will ask the questions on your one sheet, and then they'll include questions of their own. So let me just look. I know we've got lots of questions in the chat, so I'm going to try my best to answer them. So how many questions do you recommend to include on the one sheet? Peg, 3 to 5. Perfect. Yep. 3 to 5 questions, 3 to 5 topics. So yeah, I'm just scrolling to see if there's any questions I should answer here. I think, Tanisha, I answered your question. It is different than a press kit. So your one sheet is, again, it's a one pager, bio, topics, questions, contact info, website. It's giving the podcast host exactly what they need to know to say yes to interviewing you and then to be prepared for an interview with you. You may have a lot more topics and questions than just the 3 to 5 or 7 or whatever. That you can put the rest in a Dropbox folder that you share with hosts who interview you. You can put it on a press kit or a media page on your website where you have links to different headshots. You could have a short, medium, long bio. That's all stuff you can make and put on your website, on your media sheet. But the one pager, the purpose is to get you booked and to give the host the minimum of what they would need to do an interview with you right now. Once they book you and schedule you and all of that, of course, you can give them more. You can give them your photos. You can give them more questions. You could do a pre-call with them. But the one sheet is just to get started and to get you booked. All right. So I have some tips for you on how to write your interview topic. So I saw somebody ask, will you give me feedback? We have over 1,700 people in this masterclass, so we cannot give feedback on everyone's one sheet, but I am going to give you some suggestions here and some guidance so that way you can kind of self-audit your interview topics and questions. So some tips I have for you is, number one, what are the biggest breakthroughs you help your clients to achieve? So this is sort of like a journal prompt, something to get you thinking, but what are the biggest breakthroughs that you help your clients to achieve? And as you're thinking and getting that clarity and getting present to the breakthroughs you help your clients to achieve, you can reverse engineer an interview topic or a suggested question that you can ask on a podcast host that will tee you up to share a story about a client that you helped have a breakthrough. I'm going to repeat that. By getting clear on what breakthroughs you help your clients to achieve, you can then reverse engineer an interview topic or an interview question that will tee you up to share a story about how you helped your client achieve that type of breakthrough. Stories sell. Tell lots of stories on your interviews. The more stories you can share on podcasts, the more people will feel connected with you. The more people in the audience will feel like they can see themselves as your client. So that's number one, get really clear on how you help your clients have breakthroughs in their business or their life. Number two, what are your clients' biggest pain points? What are your clients' biggest pain points? Your interview topics and your suggested interview questions should communicate to the host how you will help their listeners relieve pain points. So by getting clear on the pain points that you help your clients to get rid of, you can then reverse engineer and create an interview topic that addresses how you help people with XYZ pain point. So one of the topics that I will talk about on podcasts is how service-based entrepreneurs can use podcast guesting to attract more dream clients. I know that my target audience, their pain point is attracting more dream clients. So by having that as an interview topic, a host who is speaking to my target audience will see that and say, oh, Jessica's going to help them with something that I know they're struggling with. So have an interview topic, have interview topics and questions that clearly communicate that you understand your target audience's pain points, and you will tell them in that interview how they can relieve that pain point. What are your passions, right? What are you passionate about? What could you just talk about for hours with no prep, with no notes? What could you talk about? What are you really passionate about? What lights you up? Podcast interviews that produce amazing results all have one thing in common. The host, the guest, they're really passionate about what they're talking about. And this is important because listeners don't want to work with somebody that is bored and burnt out. So make sure that you are passionate and you are lit up about what you're talking about. This is critical. So list out what you're passionate about, because it doesn't always have to be like what is in your business. Sometimes it's important to pepper in a topic or a question that cues you up to talk about other aspects of your life. Humanizing your brand is a really amazing benefit of podcast guesting. People can get to know you personally because they're hearing stories of you, and you can share things about yourself personally, and you can share about what you're passionate about on podcasts. So journal that out a little bit. Get really present to what you're passionate about. All right, last prompt here to get you thinking about some interview topic ideas. What are your beliefs about your industry or, the industry you're in that may be polarizing or maybe different than the majority opinion that makes people stop and want to listen? For example, our client, Barry Rutten, his website is wealthdefensegroup.com. He really talks about how he's not the biggest fan of financial radio hosts. And so he will talk about that on podcasts. He'll talk about on podcasts how you really cannot always trust the opinions and the guidance of financial journalists because they're not necessarily certified financial planners. They don't have, regulations in place. So that's just an example of something that Barry's really passionate about, that it's a little bit of a polarizing view. And it makes him more interesting because he's not just going on here's how to plan your finances. He's like, all right, this lights me up. People need to hear this. So what lights you up? What is something about your industry, your business that you're like, people need to hear this? Podcast guesting is most effective when you have a topic where you just want to shout it from the rooftops. When I meet an entrepreneur who has not yet been doing podcast interviews, they need visibility. I'm like, you need to be doing podcast interviews. Like, you have to. And let me tell you why. Like, I just get so excited about it because I've seen time and time again, when somebody does commit to podcast guesting, they have the most amazing breakthroughs. They experience transformation. They grow their business. They raise their prices. They have more confidence. Like, it's so exciting to me to see people learn about this. So what is that for you? What about your business? What do you do that you're like, I need more people to know about this? Because when you get present to the thing that you're like, I need more people to know about this, you can't not go on podcasts. You can't not break through the obstacles that have been holding you back up until now. All right. So get clear on all of this, because this will help you have clarity on what should be on your podcast one sheet. All right. So I'm going to give you some examples now of our clients. So you can get, if you're not a copywriter, that's okay. I'm going to give you some examples that you can get inspired by. So our client, Dr. Jolie Hamilton, absolutely love her. She's been working with us for multiple years, has experienced just incredible growth in her business and in her life from podcast guesting. One of her topics is called Creative Monogamy for People Who Want More but don't want to open their marriage sexually. So Dr. Jolie Hamilton is a relationship coach for couples who color outside the lines. She helps people open up their marriage, open up their relationship. She's talking about a spicy topic. And so that topic is great because it's something that people go, like I'm interested in hearing more, So that's a really great topic. I'm going to put that in the chat so that you guys, if you're visual, I'm going to copy and paste this and put it in the chat for you. All right. That's one example. Another example, our client, Lori Lewis, she is an intermittent fasting coach for women in menopause. So one of her questions is, how can we combat our expectation that we will only get sicker, heavier, and foggier forever? So why this question is good is it is speaking to an assumption that her target audience has. So what is an assumption or a myth that your target audience, that your ideal clients have, and create a topic or question that addresses that head on? Like, what are the assumptions, myths, beliefs that your ideal client has that holds them back from working with you? What are those beliefs that hold people back from taking action and investing in your services and products? If you can address those and dispel those myths as a guest on podcast, you have leads coming to you being like, cool, not even going to worry about that. For example, one of ours is we have to a lot of times deal with the objection of like, but I want podcasts. I want to be a guest on podcasts with like 20,000 listeners. Like, that is a myth that we have to overcome, that people think they need huge shows in order to have success. And so we have to say, okay, podcast is not about getting to the masses. This is about, seeing the value in small to mid-range shows. So this is something we talk about a lot when we're interviewed on podcasts. And it works because when somebody hears me as a guest, they hear an interview where I address the power of mid-range shows, where I address that podcasts are not about getting in front of millions of people. Then I have leads that come to me and they're like, no, I get it. I get that small to mid-range shows are where I'm going to see success. I'm like, easy peasy. Like, I don't have to overcome that hurdle. So what are the objections you're hearing in your sales calls where if leads didn't have those objections, your life would be so much easier and you would double your close rate? Talk about that on podcasts. Get that content out on podcasts, because if they hear it on a podcast interview before they book a sales call with you, your life will be so much easier. All right. Another example for you is our client, Daniel Mangena. One of his topics is money DNA, infinite leverage and unlimited flow. Oh, hold on. That just went to just Paul. 1 second. So that is an example for you. This is great. If you have, like, who here has a methodology, a method, like something custom that you have created, like unique IP, that can be an interview topic for you. So Dan is like money DNA, like that is his thing. When people ask, how have you become so successful? Money DNA. So it makes sense that that would be a topic on his one sheet. Okay. Telling stories. So that's about topics and questions. Now I want to really focus with you on the power of telling stories. When you are a guest on a podcast, it is incredibly important that you are answering questions in stories. Stories sell. Stories are what allow listeners to really imagine what it would be like to work with you. Stories are what allow listeners to connect with you emotionally. Stories are what inspire the podcast host to ask follow-up questions. So that way it doesn't just become like a Q&A back and forth interview. Stories are what inspire conversation. So answer your questions in stories. One thing that you want to do is when you look through your interview topics, jot out a bunch of stories, create an arsenal. My friend Jacqueline Nico, who's a speaker trainer in Australia, actually, she says like write out a bunch of stories that you could tell. Over time, you will be inspired to share stories that you didn't think to write out. Sorry, I have a hair in my eye. So you can write out stories. And then over time, the more you get interviewed, the more you will think of stories. Like I shared a story once on a podcast that I hadn't even thought of that story until the person asked me this question. And I was like, oh, I've never even shared that story before, but you asked that question and now I thought of it and here I am sharing it. So answer in stories. If you aren't used to telling stories, write them out, get really specific, drop people into a moment, tell them where you were, what were you wearing, who was with you, what was the weather, like bring people into a moment and slow down. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they are telling stories is they go super, super fast. They kind of glaze over the details and they just move on. Drop people into a moment, set the scene, give them context, tell them how you were feeling in that moment, really bring people into that world so they can imagine being there, being a fly on that wall. That's what makes stories really, really compelling and really powerful. And just remember that when you're a guest on podcasts, people are hearing you for the first time. Even if you have shared the story a million times, just know that people are hearing it for the first time. So make sure that you are delivering each story like it's the first time somebody is hearing it. So one of the most common stories you'll likely share as an entrepreneur getting interviewed is how you started your business. I have shared the story of how my dad helped me start the business, how I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I've shared that story like a million times. I share it as if it's the first time I'm telling it because I know that every time I share that story, it's the first time some people have heard it. And so I don't want to be like, oh, yeah, you know my story. Because then there's going to be listeners that are like, no, I don't. I don't know your story. I'm new here. So share each story as if it is the first time people are hearing it. So let's do a quick recap. So far, we have talked about the importance of having clear goals for why you are doing this. Let me know in the chat if you didn't share earlier, what are your goals? They could be increased brand awareness, having more warm, qualified leads into your pipeline. I mean, one of the biggest things that can hold you back from growing your business to the next level is just not having enough leads. So maybe it's just lead gen. You need more leads in order to reach your sales goals. That's an amazing goal to have with podcast guesting. Closing more high ticket clients. Maybe you have created a high ticket offering, but you just don't have enough people who are lined up, ready to buy it. So having a goal to generate more high ticket clients is a great goal. Increasing the number of followers that you have online, and then it's strengthening your authority online, especially for my friends here who are speakers. If you want to be growing your speaking business and getting booked to speak, you have to be getting interviewed on podcasts. When people book speakers, they want to know that they're actually a great speaker. And if you have podcast interviews featuring you as a guest, that's a really easy way to showcase your speaking abilities. And not only showcase your speaking abilities, but to continuously practice. So going on podcasts every single week, every single month, you are going to get better and better and better as a speaker. So by getting better as a speaker, you will attract more speaking opportunities. We talked about your target audience, really getting clear on your ideal client. Who are your referral partners, people that would book you to speak, and then people that can connect you with those types of individuals. You need to have a mindset and a commitment to be all in and serve. One of the things that will hold you back from being successful as a podcast guest is questioning every time you're on a podcast. Is this going to work? Am I going to get leads from this? If you continuously ask this question and are skeptical or suspicious or not really sure if it's going to work, it probably won't. What you believe will happen will happen. So believe that by getting on podcasts, by speaking to your target audience, by providing value, believe that that will grow your business, because it will. But you have to believe that, and you have to have the mindset that by you going out and providing value for free, that you will grow your business. Yes. And then we talked all about your podcast one sheet. So put it in the chat. Who has some interview topics that you know are going to go on your one sheet? Who has some suggested questions? Put them in the chat right now and share them. And I can maybe give some feedback. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat as well. We may have some time here to do some Q&A. Peter is asking, how do you find the best podcast to ask to be a guest on? So yeah, I can definitely touch on this a little bit. This is what we do at Interview Connection. So if you are like, this is amazing, I definitely want help getting interviewed, we're going to drop the link, book a call with me, and we can talk more about what it would look like to be represented by our agency and to do all that work. So our booking team, part of what we do for our clients is to research and identify the right shows. So we create criteria for you so that it's very objective and clear what the types of shows are that you need to be a guest on. So having all that we talked about in place, knowing what your goals are as a podcast guest, knowing who your target audience is, knowing what your topics are, you need to know all that in order to identify the right shows. So for example, if your expertise is in sales, then for example, we would say, okay, sales podcasts would likely be a great fit, but then who's the target audience? Women in business. Okay, podcasts targeting women in business may or may not be podcasts that are about sales, because if you're coaching somebody on their sales, they might not be thinking to go listen to a sales podcast. So we think about all the different types of shows that would be relevant to your topic, speaking to your target audience, and that are established. It's ideal to be going on shows that are a bit more established, have produced, 20, 30, 40 episodes consistently. So they have an engaged audience. Also looking at who the host of the podcast is. Like I said, one way to convert high ticket clients from podcast guesting is to be going on podcasts where the host of the show is an ideal client. So when we work with our clients, we learn about their ideal client, and then we look for shows that are established, that are relevant to their topic. And then we look at who the host is, and we're like, this is going to be a really great connection. This host is an ideal client. So if they go and they do a great interview, it's likely that the host is going to want to have another call with them. Now, there are a lot of different ways to research and identify podcasts. This is quite literally a full-time job for multiple employees of ours. I mean, there's many different directories. There's Google searching. We have our own custom software that we've built, our database that we use to find shows that we've already connected with. So that's it's a lot of researching. And the reason we provide this service of pitching and booking and getting you secured for interviews is because it takes a lot of time to be sifting through and identifying which shows are the right fit. Do they take guests? Are they consistently publishing? So I do encourage you, if you are interested in getting help to get booked, book a call with me. Matt and Sammy will put the link in the chat. It's interviewconnections.com/book a call. And we can hop on a 15-minute chat. I'll tell you about, the levels of service that we have to see if it would be a good match for you. All right. So let's keep moving on and talking about why podcast listeners are so much easier to close than cold leads. Because at the end of the day, when you make an investment in your marketing, when you invest time and money into getting interviewed on podcasts, you want to see that investment turn into more sales. So we're going to talk right now about how to close more sales as a podcast guest. So you develop high trust with the audience when you get interviewed on a podcast. So listeners can tell pretty immediately from hearing someone speak what level they're playing at, how experienced they are, and if they're in alignment. You can tell from somebody's personality, from their energy, listening to them on a podcast, if they're somebody that you want to spend more time listening to, or if it's just not a match. So when somebody hears you interviewed on a podcast, they get a sense that, okay, I like this person. I like their energy. I like their personality. I like their story. I can tell that they know their stuff. I can tell from the examples that they're sharing that they're super legit. And I'll give you a quick example. So Christina Woods, she is a hypnotherapist, and she spoke on the bonus session that's on the replay page of this intensive. We'll drop the link in the chat. She shared this incredible story. A podcast host who interviewed her was so blown away and so interested in her expertise and how she helps people that host booked a session with her. So yay, podcast guesting, the host became her client. And she shared this story about how that host had such amazing transformational results in their life as a result of doing a hypnotherapy session with Christina, that host wants to talk about Christina in the book they're publishing. I heard that and I was like, I want to work with Christina. That sounds amazing. So when you share stories like that, when you share how, something you did with a client was so transformational, listeners hear that and they're like, I want that. I want the results that they had. So share stories in these podcast interviews, because listeners will hear that and there will be such trust and credibility and social proof that they will be much easier to close as a client. You also are getting a tacit endorsement from that host. Podcast hosts do not interview guest experts on their show who they don't believe have value to share. So when you get interviewed on a podcast, that host is essentially saying, hey, listeners, I'm bringing this person on the show because I believe they have value to share. I believe they're a good person. I believe that they're in integrity. And I believe that their stories and their expertise is going to help you. So you're getting that endorsement from the host, which now the listeners of that show are like, cool. I know that this host that I already trust believes that this person is great. So my trust is already higher than it would be if I just found this person on Google. So just a couple of examples. Again, I talked about how Christina had a host interview her and then become a client. Jack Bosch and Michelle Bosch, they are real estate investors. They are the founders of Orbit Investments. They have closed over 7 figures from podcast guesting. Jack speaks in the bonus session that's linked, that is embedded on our replay page. So you can hear this directly from him, but he talks about how he teaches land flipping and land investing. This is a type of real estate investing that most people haven't heard of before. So I want to ask you right here, do you have a topic or a service where a lot of people haven't heard of it before? They're not familiar with it. It's something that a lot of people don't know about. Yeah, Steve. Yeah, I'm looking at you. So do you have something that you're like, people just don't know about this? And if they knew, it would like blow their mind and it would change their life and it would help them grow so much. So if you have something that you're like, people just don't know that this exists, you need to be getting on podcasts. And so that is Jack and Michelle's story. They teach people how to flip land. They teach people about land investing and land flipping. And so they go on podcasts and they really show people this strategy and this methodology of investing that most people haven't heard of before. And then listeners and hosts alike are like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know about this. And okay, yeah, you have a free, training that I can watch. Great. I want to go watch that training. So what they do is they do these free workshops where people can come and learn for free a lot more about land flipping. And then they sell into a course. And then they have coaching offerings. They also have ways that people can invest with them. So when they look at the last several years of podcast guesting, they attribute millions of dollars in sales for the different revenue streams of their business that ultimately stemmed from them getting interviewed on podcasts, educating the market, building relationships with podcast hosts. Again, educate the market and build relationships with podcast hosts. Those are 2 of the core things you want to focus on as a podcast guest. You want to be educating the market and building your network of these podcast hosts. Podcast hosts are influencers. They have audiences of your target market that trust them. And when you have more podcast hosts that know, like, and trust you and that are in your network, that is a very, very powerful strategy for growing. Dr. Julie Hamilton, I gave her as an example with the interview topic. She has grown her business from she was a traditional therapist. So is anyone here kind of in like a traditional, like you want to scale up? Maybe you have a traditional therapy practice, you want to be growing and building more of a coaching practice where you can work. Answer the question in the chat, Harriet, Jack and Michelle Bosch, Bosch. You can find Jack Bosch on Facebook. Perfect. Thanks, Matt. So you want to be building relationships with hosts. Dr. Julie Hamilton has grown from a kind of a traditional therapy practice to this very successful 6-figure coaching business where she has a group program. She does high ticket one-on-one work, and she started working with us to promote her book that she wrote. And over time that she's getting interviewed on podcasts, she really honed in on her messaging. She got much more vocal about what she actually is an expert in, jealousy. She's an expert in jealousy. And she talks about non-monogamy, consensual non-monogamy. And in the beginning, when she started working with us, that was sort of like behind the scenes. Like she was talking about like relationships. And then over time, she realized that like being very vocal and loud and proud about what she actually is super passionate about, her results just skyrocketed because she's been visible on so many podcasts. She's had amazing like major media outlets like NPR, New York Times, The Atlantic, Vogue have reached out to get a quote from her because she is clearly the go-to expert in jealousy, the go-to expert in having an open relationship. And then Dan Mangana is another client who speaks in the bonus session about how he has just gotten countless new clients from podcast guesting. And he is a huge advocate for the power of small to mid-range podcasts. When you are on a podcast that has 100 listeners, 200 listeners, it is likely that most of those listeners know the host personally. So there is a much higher level of trust that the listener has with the host because they know each other personally. So there's a lot of power in going on these mid-range shows where, I mean, think about if you go, like, have you ever been invited to do a training for a coach's clients? Like we bring in trainings to do, bring in experts to do trainings for our clients, and maybe it's a small training and there's 10 clients there. Well, that is a very intimate setting. But what will likely happen is that expert is going to walk away with 5 new clients because it was such an intimate setting that there's such high level of trust and opportunity to really tailor the message to the people there. So don't discount the power of these small to mid-range shows. There's a lot of power in speaking to these really targeted audiences. Paul, I see your question. Book a call with me. We have a few different levels, so we can customize what we do for you. So we'll drop a link again, book a call with me and we can talk more. Okay, so next step in generating sales. So now we've kind of talked about some examples and how to generate sales as a podcast guest. I want to go over some tactics so you can really implement this stuff immediately to see results. You need to have a call to action at the end of your podcast. So 9 times out of 10, when I talk to a business owner who has been getting interviewed on podcasts but hasn't monetized, I always ask, what is your call to action? And a lot of times they say, I didn't have one. So that's why. If you don't have a call to action at the end of your podcast interviews, you will have a very difficult time generating leads and sales as a podcast guest. So number 1, you have to have a call to action. Number 2, your call to action needs to be effective. And so now we're going to talk about how to have a really effective call to action. So what is a call to action? At the end of a podcast interview, the host will ask you, they'll say, this has been great. How can our listeners get to know you and learn more about you, connect with you online? Don't fall into the trap and give them every social media that you're on, every website. This is a big pitfall where people say, well, I'm on Instagram. This is my handle. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. This is my website. Don't do that. You want to give them one direction, one place that they can go. The call to action is taking listeners on a journey they've heard about you, and now you're guiding them on this journey to ultimately becoming your client, right? You're guiding them into the top of your funnel. Some listeners will say, yeah, I'm just going to book a call with you. but you need to bring people into the top of your funnel and guide them on that journey. Now, if you tell a listener, you could go to my Instagram, you go to my LinkedIn, you're giving them 5 different directions. And if somebody gives you a map and you're like, well, you could take this route, you could take this route, you could take this route, you're going to be like, I'm just going to use my GPS. Thank you. Goodbye. So tell them one place to go. Now, how do you know where to send them? This is your opportunity to send them to the one place that will ultimately get them to being your client as seamlessly as possible. What is the path of least resistance? So some rules of thumb, your call to action, it needs to be free. Your call to action should not be your $500 course. That is too fast, too soon. They just heard you on a podcast. Don't try to sell to them right away. All right. Give them a free offer, something that is going to be valuable to them. You need to tell them one thing. Do not give them a menu of 5 different actions they can take. Tell them one thing. The majority of podcast listeners are on mobile. They're listening on their phone. If I'm listening to a podcast and I'm sitting at my desk, it is still playing out of my phone. All right. People are listening on mobile. They're going for a walk. They're doing their dishes. They're exercising. They're in their yard. They're cleaning their room. They're putting their laundry away. They are not at a computer ready to open up 5 different tabs of where they could possibly find you online. So it needs to be one thing that's easy to remember. It needs to be valuable. You could offer a call to action that is a consultation call with you, but you need to position it as something that is highly valuable, that whether or not they buy from you, they will still get value from talking to you. So make sure that this call to action is of value. And again, your call to action needs to be the next intentional stop on the journey that a client makes from when they first hear about you on a podcast to when they ultimately become your client. So some examples of simple calls to action that work: a consultation call. Booking a call is a great call to action. I love it. I do it. A lot of my clients use call to action to book a call. Our client, Mark Willis, is a certified financial planner. He's closed dozens of clients in his business. And at the end of his podcast interviews, he invites listeners to go to his website, book a call. They'll get a free copy of his book when they book the call. Like, it is simple. It's seamless. It gets people right into his funnel. Just tell people to book a call. Another example, our client, Steve Wiedemann, is an SEO consultant and agency owner. He closed a $60,000 client from a listener, heard him as a podcast guest, and took his call to action. He invites listeners to connect with him on LinkedIn and add a note sharing with him, what's the page on your website that you want help converting? So right there, that is incredibly valuable because his target audience has that pain point. So he is identifying a pain point that he knows his ideal client has, and he is inviting people to connect with him on LinkedIn so he can get into an immediate back and forth conversation with them. And he is inviting them to connect with him so that he can help them right away. So what have I said? I just thought of this. Connect with me on LinkedIn, everyone, and give me one of your interview topics that you want help writing, right? You'll be like, yeah, I want feedback on my interview topics. I'm going to go connect with Jess on LinkedIn right now. So give people a call to action that's highly valuable, that addresses a pain point that you can help, because then when you get into a back and forth conversation with somebody, you can invite them to get on a call. So again, if the journey is ultimately, okay, I know that if I'm going to close this person as a client, I need to ultimately talk to them. How can I get them engaging with me in conversation online? I need to provide value. So you want to kind of lead people on this journey where you're continuing to give them value, but you're also getting them closer to the point where they can make a buying decision. Another call to action is offering a free book, or, maybe the first 3 chapters of your book. Our client, Chris Prefontaine, he's a real estate investing coach. He offers his book for free on podcast interviews, a digital download, because he knows that 50% of people that download his book will convert into his coaching program. So who here is an author? Who's written a book? You got a book, you have a book. If you're a service-based entrepreneur and you have a book, likely your book is like you're not trying to close enough sales to pay your bills with your book. The book, you want to get that into the hands of your ideal client so that they read it and then want to become your client. So that's really who we're talking to with podcast guesting, is like, you have a book that builds up your positioning, your credibility, and you want that book to get into as many ideal clients' hands as possible. So knowing that if somebody reads your book, they're much more likely to buy from you, you want to get that book out there. So your book can be your call to action. All right. Another great call to action could be a Facebook group or an online community. So do you have a Facebook group or a LinkedIn group, somewhere where you have, like, it's a free community online where you can be nurturing and providing value and building community? That is a great call to action. So inviting people to join your online community. If you have a Facebook group, make sure you have questions set up where you can get their email address and their name, maybe ask one question that allows you to qualify them as an ideal client. So you can invite people to join your Facebook group. You could also offer a quiz. So this is like a lead magnet, something like a quiz or a free report, something that somebody gives you their email and name in exchange for something valuable. So something valuable is to take a quiz. Our client, Stacey Brown Randall, sends leads to her referral ninja quiz. And she, has shared that quizzes are an easy and engaging, they're easy and engaging because the quiz taker is taking action while answering the questions. You can customize the results, which allow the quiz taker to know where they are starting from, which connects them to you to learn more. So put it in the chat. I'm going to take a drink of water and I want you to put it in the chat. What is your call to action? Oh, yes. We have another client that has a quiz about what vegetable you are, as Sammy just said. That's very fun too. What is your call to action? If you didn't know what your call to action would be, come up with one right now. This intensive is all about taking action. All right. So what would your call to action be? Based on what you just learned, what would be a great call to action for you? All right. So I'm going to go through a couple and do some quick laser coaching. So Kristen, 1 month access to your self-care program. So Kristen, what I would recommend is just clarify that a little bit, because at first glance or first listen, that might come across a little salesy. Don't put this in the chat if you don't want me to laser coach you right in front of everyone. So you want to make sure that doesn't come off a little salesy, because somebody that's not ready yet to invest in your program might be like, wait, I'm not quite ready yet. So it could literally be that, but just reposition it. So like, what does it look like to have to have 1 month access in your self-care program? Is that like a specific number of modules? Maybe you could offer them like a free video series or something like that. So it's just like clear, cut and dry. Because when I think about a free access, sometimes they'll still take my card and they're like, we won't charge you till the end of the free period. And then I'm like, now I got to remember to cancel if I don't want to do it. So you want to remove any obstacles that will have people questioning whether they want to take the action. Will this work on a Facebook page? I would not recommend sending people to a Facebook page for a couple of reasons. Facebook is very difficult to market on. If you're not paying for ads, you are pretty much not getting visibility there. So I would not recommend sending people to a Facebook page. A group is different because you can get people into a community. You can get their contact information. You could use the everyone tag to send out notifications. But when someone just likes your Facebook page, you're not getting their information. The goal of a call to action is to get their information so that you can be nurturing them and engaging with them as a potential client. Alan, a free consultation, free consult regarding their trauma. That's great. One of our clients, Karen McMahon, her business is Journey Beyond Divorce. She offers a rapid relief call. Love it. Such a great name, because people who are going through divorce, they want rapid relief. So she gets a ton of calls booked by making that offer as her call to action. Peter, book a consult or give away a competitive marketing analysis. Ooh, I like the sound of that. Yes, that sounds really good. Anything where I read it and I'm like, ooh, that sounds interesting. I'm sure once you give it as a call to action on a podcast, you're going to get people that want it. Download the 2023 Courage Calendar. Love, I want it. Offering the first 3 chapters of my book through anyone who likes my Facebook group. Yeah, perfect. Quiz, love it. Steve Collar Consulting, book a call to go over your specific strategy. Absolutely. If somebody hears you on a podcast, Steve, and they learn about trust and they're interested, they're going to want to call with you. They're going to want to talk through their individual situation. Nikki, a free mini course, a free Facebook group, some free e-guides. Absolutely. Any of the above, just choose one. Free workbook, mirror affirmations. Yes, Michelle. If that is a part of your topic affirmation, somebody that likes affirmations wants more of them and wants more ideas. So that's a really great giveaway. Worksheets, yes, books, free handouts, consultations. These are great. Everyone's doing so well. Strategy discovery call. Go to my website to get a free balance PDF assessment sheet. Perfect. If you are sending people to a landing page to have them opt in to get something, make sure that opt-in is on a page that converts well. So it can kind of have the opposite effect if you have a landing page that's like not designed well and it's just like an opt-in and there's nothing else there. You don't want to throw spaghetti at a wall. And when you send people to a page that is not designed to convert, it can have the opposite effect. So I'm not saying this to say you need to go hire a web designer and like do all this stuff. No. What I'm saying is just tell them to email you. Email me and I will send you this gift. Because they email you, you now have their information and you can just send it right to them. So just wanted to give that note there. Oh my gosh, so many. I'm not going to be able to read all of these live, but these are all amazing. Yes, Catherine, hypnosis audio. I love that. As somebody who is taking an interest in hypnosis, having more, like if I were offered a free hypnosis audio, I would 100% download that because I'm interested in it. This is great. Yes. Book a 15-minute discovery call to get 15% off any speaking fees. Dan, I would avoid offering 15% off. When you offer a coupon code, that immediately occurs a little bit as like you're selling to them. So just remember that rule of thumb that your call to action needs to be free. So just think about what can you offer as a call to action that is free, that is high value. People like the booking you to speak, is it like that is the bottom of your funnel and people are coming in at the top. So just kind of what can you offer that will get them closer to the bottom, but not quite jump them there super, super fast or faster than they are ready. Okay. All right. Now I want to invite everyone who's like, this is great. I want to get on podcasts. I'm so excited. Book a call with me to learn about how we can book you on podcasts. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that in a few minutes, like how our agency works. But if you want to be getting on podcasts, you want our help, you want our guidance, we do guide our clients with their call to action. So this is something that as a client, we're going to make sure you have a great call to action. You can book a 15-minute call with me and we can talk through what level of service we have that would be a good fit for you. All right. So back to the intensive. The next strategy for generating sales as a podcast guest is to be leveraging your relationships with the podcast host. This is huge. I shout this from the rooftop because so many business owners who generate sales as a podcast guest, it's actually through the host becoming their client that they see this amazing return on investment. So of course, you want to have a great call to action. You want to give a great interview to get listeners reaching out. But most of the time, it is the host of the show that becomes your client. It is the host of the show that refers somebody to you. It is the host of the podcast that says, I have somebody that you need to talk to because they should book you to speak at their event. So really focus on the host. So number one, the podcast host is a great person to ask if they would like to be an affiliate or a referral partner for you, for your program. So Jack and Michelle Bosch, who I already talked about, they invite podcast hosts to be an affiliate of their course. So they have a course, I think it's like $2,500, don't quote me, but it's a multi-$1,000 course. And they say to hosts, would you like to be an affiliate? If so, I will give a special link at the end of this episode for our free training. And then anyone who comes through your affiliate link, you'll get a percentage of the sale. That's great. It motivates less. I mean, if a host says yes, they'll likely be more motivated to promote that episode because they'll get some commission out of it. So you can invite podcast hosts to be an affiliate. Not every host will want to be an affiliate. That's okay. Lots of people just like to promote people without getting a commission, but it is just an option that you could create an affiliate program or referral partner program where you incentivize somebody to promote you by offering them a commission. Okay. Next, you can build relationships with podcast hosts so that they're there to support you and help you promote what you're doing. So when we do, like this intensive or our podcast guesting masterclass, we will oftentimes reach out to podcast hosts that interviewed me or Margie and say, hey, would you be willing to share about this on your feed? Would you be willing to invite a couple friends to attend that you think would find value in what we do? And a lot of the time the hosts are like, yes, I know that you're an expert. I interviewed you. You provide, like, that's how this goes. So by building relationships with podcast hosts, you now have this network of hosts that are there to support you. I did a breakthrough call with a client recently, and, she's just finished doing like 50 interviews with us. And I advised her, I said, you want to go back to every single host that interviewed you and just make that ask. If you know anyone that is interested in my coaching, would you please refer them to me? You got to ask for what you want. And when you ask people that know, like, and trust you and that you've given value to for what you want, you're more likely to get it. So build relationships with podcast hosts, stay in touch with hosts. A lot of people go on podcasts and they do an interview and then they go on and they're like, I didn't get a client. It's like, well, have you built your relationship with the host? Did you rate and review the show? Did you stay in touch with the host? And they're like, no, I didn't do any of that. Okay. You get out of this what you put into it. Like, you get out of podcast guesting what you put into it. When you invest in relationships, you get more out of them. So focus on investing in your relationships with podcast hosts, and they will move mountains for you. They will promote you. They'll refer to you. They will tell everyone about you. Cami Gildner, for example, she is a client of ours. She's interviewed, I think, both me and Margie on her podcast. She promotes us. She refers business to us. Like, she is one of our biggest supporters. And I promote her stuff. She did an event. I posted about it. I was tagging people in her local area. Like, we support each other. This is a two-way street. So when you're going on podcasts, you want to avoid, I'm going to circle back to the mindset to serve, avoid the attitude of, this host should promote me. They should have a big audience. If they don't have a big audience, I'm not going to get anything about. Like, no. You are there to serve. You are there to provide value. You are there to make sure the host looks good. When you come into it with the attitude, like, I'm here to serve and to give as much to this as I think the host will do, that is when magic happens. That's when the host is like, I want to work with you. I want to refer business to you. But you really have to have that mindset to nurture the host and nurture your relationship with them and see, like, what can you do to support them? One thing that Laura may share when she comes on is, she and I had a call recently to kind of catch up and connect. And she talks about this openly. She's like, Jessica, you're my ideal client. Like, she definitely wants me as a client. She has made that known because she's an expert. She's a master salesperson. But she didn't just say, like, please come invest in my program because I can help you. She said, like, what can I do to provide value to you? And I said, well, you could come and do a training for my clients. Like, that would be incredibly valuable for me because it would provide value to my clients. And she's like, yes, done. And there's now, like, I have such a closer connection with Laura because she provided value to me first. She invited me, like, I said, hey, will you come on and speak to my intensive? And she's like, absolutely. Like, she is just continuing to provide value to me, which continues, like, I just continue to have more trust and a connection with her because of that. So really focus on nurturing your relationships with these hosts. It's hard when you, like, want sales and you're like, I need to see results. You kind of I used to, do door-to-door canvassing. And what we'd say is you get dollar signs in your eyes. Does anyone know what that's like, to have dollar signs in your eyes? Like, I gotta close this sale. Like, I got dollar signs in my eyes. It's hard, but you need to temper that. You need to avoid having dollar signs in your eyes because there's nothing more repelling than talking to someone, like, desperate for them to sign up with you. So you want to avoid that by focusing on your relationship, by focusing on providing value, by focusing on how you can serve and give back and help somebody else grow. You will grow. Like, you will get what you want. You will see more sales and leads come in because you'll have an energy of giving, which is what people want to be around. All right, cool. Back to my notes, kind of went off script there. All right. We talked already about how hosts will become your client. I mean, we've had this example like multiple times. Our client, Nikki Nash, she's a 7-figure entrepreneur, best-selling author, host of Market Your Genius podcast. She's interviewed both me and Margie on her podcast, and then she became our client because after somebody interviews you on their podcast and they really have a connection with you, you gave a lot of value to their audience. If they need what you have, they're not going to shop around. They're like, they have a connection with you. Our client that just signed up with us, we have a connection with her. Like, we were in a mastermind group. She's like, I wouldn't think of doing this with anyone else. Like, obviously I'm going to work with Interview Connection. So when you really focus on your relationship with people and you nurture and you give value, then people won't shop around. They won't think, I'm just going to see who can do a little bit cheaper. They're going to work with you because they like you and they connect with you, and you have already given them so much value. Yes. Thank you, Catherine, for quoting Zig Ziglar, because I definitely had him in mind, but I didn't want to misquote. So Zig Ziglar says, you will get all you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. 100%. Absolutely. If you help enough other people get what they want, you will get what you want. And that really is why I love podcasting so much, is because it is a medium where you're helping other people. And when you have a topic and you have a story that can help people, then not getting on podcasts and not taking the action that would get you on podcasts is selfish, because you're holding back value that will help people, that will inspire people, that will make people feel less alone. So I urge you to take this seriously, because not only will podcast guesting grow your business, it will help people. It will change the world. And something that we're very proud about at Interview Connections is we work with clients that we're in alignment with. We work with clients that we know that, like, when we book our clients on podcasts, the world is becoming a better place. When we book our clients on podcasts, the vibes go up because they're sharing amazing stories. They're helping people. They're building relationships. Such great quotes being shared. Yeah. Impact brings income. Absolutely love it. So yes, the host will often become your client. I shared about this earlier. Christina Woods, Wise Woods Hypnotherapy, one of the podcast hosts, booked a hypnotherapy session with her. It was so amazing. The host, who is writing a book, is like, I want to talk about you in my book. So Christina's getting massive visibility, not only from that interview, but now the host is going to be talking about her. Similarly, I interviewed Elizabeth Kristoff on our podcast like 2 years ago. And it was the first time I learned about nervous system regulation. It was the first time I had learned the connection of stress and pain in my body. And now, 2 years later, Margie and I both, like, Margie is now a neurosomatic intelligence coach. She went through Elizabeth's certification, multiple, we talk about Elizabeth all the time because I interviewed her on our podcast. That was like the first step. She became our client. I interviewed her and we experienced her work. It was so transformational. We talk about her all the time. We're always referencing how, the work we've done to regulate our nervous system and how we have learned how to, incorporate nervous system regulation into our everyday life. It all comes back to, like, Elizabeth invested in herself. She invested in getting on podcasts. And it has literally changed my life, because I would show up and get on these Zooms and on podcasts, and I'd have this pain in my neck because it was so stressful that I would have this pain. And I didn't know how to get rid of it. And Elizabeth taught me how. And I'm like, I can now grow pain-free. And I'm so grateful that she invested in getting on podcasts, because I wouldn't have known any of this without her going on podcasts and speaking about it. So I really I want you to get connected with the lives you will change by speaking on podcasts. Like, who is that person that they will be pain-free because they heard you? Who is that person that will close more sales because they heard you on a podcast? There is such an amazing ripple effect that will happen in the world because you took the action to go on podcasts and to speak and to share your story, to provide value, to build relationships with hosts. Like, this is about so much more than boosting your sales and getting to the next level. This is about having an impact on the world and changing lives far beyond what you will ever see. You will never possibly know how many thousands of lives are changed because you got on podcasts. But you won't know any of it unless you actually do it. All right. And then deliver immense value in the interview. I think this goes without saying, but in order to have success with podcast guesting, you need to deliver immense value as a guest. You cannot hold back. You need to deliver as much value, as many stories, as much information as you can to make sure that the listeners get all that they can. So to give you a couple of tips, a couple of actionable tips here on how to do this, in the green room chat. So the green room chat is the period of time where you're on with the host, like on Zoom or something, but they haven't hit record yet. So you're chatting with the host, but they haven't started the interview yet. That is the green room. So it's like you're in a green room at a theater or something. So in that green room chat, ask the host, what can I do to make you look good in this interview? Hosts are used to, like, their job is to spotlight you. They're used to interviewing other people. So if you can actually say, host, how can I make you look good today to your listeners? How can I make this a great episode for you? What can I do to make sure this is the best interview you've ever done? Ask the host those questions. They'll be so blown away. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to answer to that. Nobody ever thinks to ask that. But genuinely, like, ask the host what you can do to make this a great episode for them. Tailor your answers to the host. So one thing you want to do before you're a guest on podcasts is look up who the host is, get to know them, read about their bio and everything. And then when you're being interviewed, tailor your answers to them. So Elizabeth Kristoff did this really well when she was interviewed on my podcast. She tailored her answers to me. She tailored her answers to a podcast guest. Like she gave examples of how you can regulate your nervous system before a podcast interview, like so specific, which had me much more engaged with her content and had our listeners more engaged because she was tailoring the content to our audience and to me personally. We actually have, so when you're a client of Interview Connections, we have a membership site and we have a whole training on the green room chat. So lots of examples of questions to ask the host, how to take the green room chat and like before and after the interview and guide that into a separate consultation call with the host. So we have a whole training about this. Another thing that you can do with the host to nurture your relationship with them is invite the host to be featured on your platform. So if you have your own podcast, you can invite the host to be a guest on your show if it's a good fit. If you have Instagram, LinkedIn, like there's a lot of platforms where you can do a live stream, invite them. Hey, I'd like to feature you to my audience. Let's do a swap. That's a great way to be cross-promotional and to be really collaborative and to help them grow as well. Schedule follow-up calls. So this is a great opportunity to continue building your relationship because you get interviewed on a podcast and then you go about your day and you forget like, oh, that host that interviewed me 3 months ago, we really hit it off, but then nobody followed up with each other. So schedule follow-up calls with hosts after the interview so you can keep in touch with them. And again, focus on your energy, focus on your mindset, be really present in your interviews. To be a really good podcast guest and to have like clarity in your messaging and all of these things that we feel like we need to have in place before starting, there's really what you actually need to do is just start getting interviewed. There's only so much like training and prep that you can do before actually getting on podcasts to ensure that you're a good guest. I didn't become a really good guest because I did all the speaker training. I became a really good guest because I've been interviewed on hundreds of podcasts over the last 9 years. That's really what it comes down to. So oftentimes when I talk to a business owner, they're like, I'm not sure I'm ready. I'm not sure my messaging is right. Like the only way to get that clarity and to get that confidence is to actually go do the thing, like to actually go get interviewed, to be interviewed, to build relationships, like get in practice because you can't get good at this stuff without actually practicing and doing it and taking action. So just looking at some of the questions in the chat, what if you're immensely shy? I mean, I don't know what it's like to be very shy. I'll be honest. I'm an extrovert. I'm very outgoing, but I do talk to a lot of people who are introverts, who are shy, who like to keep to themselves. And podcast guesting has been a really great way for them to get visibility because it's just you talking to one other person. It's you and the host. And so it is a way for you to get visibility to a lot of people without actually having to be around a lot of people. So if you don't like to be around a lot of people, but you need to be, go on podcasts because it's just you and one other person, but then lots of people will listen and you don't have to be around them physically. So it is a really, really good strategy for introverts because you do need to grow. You need to get visible. But if that's scary to you, podcast guesting is a way for you to access lots of people by staying in a really safe place, just you and one other person. Yes, Ben said podcasting is an introvert's dream. It really is. It really, really is. All right. So you now know your goals for podcast guesting. You've got clarity. I've pushed you to write it down. You know your interview topics and questions, have that clarity around you need to be talking about your ideal client's pain points. You need to be addressing stories that showcase your work and your amazing brilliance. You know who you need to be speaking to, right? Your ideal client, your referral partners, people that can book you to speak, people that want to read your book, get your course. And now you know your call to action. You have a ton of amazing examples of CTAs that work. You likely do not want to spend hours and hours researching for podcasts, sending pitches, tracking the pitches, following up, dealing with the rejections, trying to find email addresses. It is a lot of work to be finding podcasts, to be pitching, and to be getting booked on a consistent basis. It takes a lot of time. And so far today, you have learned how to lay a strong foundation for your podcast guesting strategy. You know what you need to know in order to get started. You know that you need to be sharing stories in order to grow your business and change lives. You know how to write interview topics that catch the attention of a podcast host and set you up for success. And now you can see all the different ways that you can generate more leads and sales as a podcast guest. So you now have a choice. You can stay where you are. You can say, Jess, that was an amazing intensive. I learned so much. Bye. That's totally fine. Or you can choose to take action. You can choose to book a call with me and say, this was amazing. I know I need to be getting interviewed on podcasts. I know it is my responsibility to take the action I need to take to reach more people so I can grow my business and change more lives. And I know that I need to break through any fear that I have. I need to break through any beliefs or assumptions that are holding me back, that have held me back up until now. And I need to book a call with you, Jess. That's what I want you to do. So you can make the choice. If you choose to not book a call with me and you're like, this was great, bye, no judgment. But if you know right now intuitively, this is what you need to do, and it would be irresponsible for you to hold your message back, then I want you to click the link in the chat and grab a 15-minute call on my calendar. Again, if you're joining us late or if you don't know us, we are the leader. Interview Connections is the leader in the podcast booking industry. We were the first to market in 2013 when I founded Interview Connections. Our team of booking agents are responsible for booking thousands of podcast interviews a year, which have resulted in millions of dollars in sales for the hundreds of clients we represent. We are known as the premier booking agency because we work with high-achieving entrepreneurs who know the value of their time and they want to stay in their zone of genius. We support our clients in many different ways. So we support them by giving you that done for you aspect. We find the shows, we pitch you, we get you booked. So we handle all of that. We also support our clients in the strategy for monetizing the mic. So we have a membership site where we are actually teaching you how to, use that green room chat. We have trainings on how to close sales from podcast interviews, how to build out your sales funnel. We have trainings on how to build referral partnerships with podcast hosts. So we give you a ton of amazing, valuable content to help you monetize the mic. We also do interview audits with you. So once a quarter, you can submit one of your podcast interviews to our client success coaches, and they will listen and give you specific feedback on how you can continue to improve and be an even more effective guest. Interview Connections, we are not for everyone. So we are not for the business owner who is like they need a Hail Mary strategy. Like if you're teetering on the edge of like bankruptcy and you need something to get you out of it, please do not work with us. Podcast guesting is about building your brand awareness. It's about long-term growth. So if you're looking for something that's going to turn things around overnight, this is not for you. Interview Connections is for entrepreneurs who feel like the best kept secret. Who here feels like the best kept secret? Like, you have an incredible business. You change lives when you work with clients. You have an amazing story that you want to get out there. If you feel like the best kept secret, we want to work with you. We love working with entrepreneurs who feel like the best kept secret. You have an amazing service that changes lives. If you can just work with more people, you will impact the world in such a bigger way. And you have a desire to have a positive impact. We love working with high vibe people. We are in this to help make the world a better place and help business owners make more money by sharing their story and getting in front of their ideal client in a way that's in alignment, in a way that's rooted in relationships and providing value. So if you know that podcast guesting is what you want to be doing to grow your business in 2023, then book a call with me. I will talk through with you. We do have multiple packages. So whether you're looking for 2 interviews a month or 4 interviews a month, whether you want to do this for a year or more, or you want to do it for 6 months, book a call with me. You and I will have a one-on-one conversation and figure out what the best next step is for you. I do want to address also, please don't be nervous to book a call with me. I have had people say like, I am not sure I'm ready for this. I am really nice. I will not be mean to you. There will be zero judgment if this is the right fit, if this is not the right fit. I will honestly help you assess if this is an investment that's going to help you grow your business. I will not be afraid to say you shouldn't do this. If it is, I am going to strongly encourage you to take action and make an investment in working with us, because when I see that something is going to help you grow, I'm going to tell you to do it, and to get past any fears or hesitations that you have. Let me know if you have any questions in the chat. And also, there are over 200 people here. Is Laura Wright in the Zoom room yet? Because she is going to be coming on, and I don't know I don't think she's here yet. So what questions do you have? Put them in the chat. I want to go over some kind of frequently. Okay, so put your questions in the chat. How will we receive the replay? We are going to be emailing and texting out the replay. So you'll get it. Don't you worry. If you signed up for this masterclass, then we have your email. We may have your phone number. We'll email it out. We'll text it out. It is also going to be on the replay page. So interviewconnections.com/replays, I believe. Matter Sammy, let's put there we go. Marie asked, what kind of coaching do you have for talking on podcasts, and how should I look on a podcast? So we do interview audits with our clients. So number one, just to really get better at being a podcast guest, you really just have to get out there. Your first interview might not be great. Like, you may stumble over your words, your stories might not be compelling. That's okay. If you're perfect what's the saying? Like, if you're perfect when you get started, you waited too long to start. So the first step is actually doing the podcast interviews and just getting practice. From there, we do interview audits. So our team will actually listen to your interview, give you that specific feedback, coaching you through on how to say less crutch words, how to really hone in on your messaging, how to give a great call to action. And we do encourage you to listen to your own interviews as well. It might be cringy at first. Nobody likes to hear their own voice recorded, but it does really help to listen back, because you are going to be your worst critic. So if you want to get good, listen to your own interviews and critique yourself. I promise it'll make you better. Marie asked, how should I look on a podcast? So that is really up to you. You do want to have good lighting when you're on a podcast. Podcasts tend to be audio, but most podcasts now are recording with video on. So obviously, just want to look like yourself. It really depends if you're a casual person and you're always in jeans and a t-shirt. Like, be yourself, be authentic. I'm not in sequins every day. I really dressed up for you guys today, but like, look professional, have good lighting, look into the camera, turn off all distractions so you don't have any buzzers going off or notifications or anything like that. Is there a different approach if people host their own podcast? That is a great question. So, Kim, I think I need you to clarify your question, because if you host your own podcast, then you should definitely be getting interviewed on other people's podcasts. Our client Karen has her own show, and she started working with us because she wanted to grow her audience. Like, her goal was to grow her podcast audience. And there's no better way to grow your own show's audience than getting on podcasts, because every single person listening to a podcast is a podcast listener because they're listening to a podcast. So if you have your own show and you want to grow your audience, you should definitely be guesting on other people's audience. So let me know if you want me to. Okay, great. Answered your question. I love it. Any other questions? Put them in the chat. Yeah, done is better than perfect. Absolutely. Okay, Izzy asks, would you recommend podcast guesting for brand new business owners who do not have a community or clients yet? Yes. I started getting interviewed on podcasts 6 months into my business because somebody invited me on, and I was like, really? I'm like a mom and I'm at home with my baby and I'm just starting my business, but they wanted to hear from me. So absolutely. Now, whether or not you're ready to invest in our services, that's a different question. You can feel free to book a call and I'll help you guide that. But I do these masterclasses. So whether you're ready to invest in interview connections or not, you can take action and start getting interviewed on podcasts, because how you build a community is you get visibility. How you get clients is you get visibility and you build relationships. So definitely you should be getting interviewed on podcasts, whether you're brand new or whether you're super experienced and in business a long time. Are podcasts in international markets? Peter, great question. Yes, they are. Podcast listeners are global. Where's my globe here? Hold on, you guys. Peter, it's like you knew I had this in my office. So I actually got this because we went to the Global Speaker Summit. So for example, this podcast host is in New Jersey, and they have listeners in all these different countries. So you can see how podcast listeners are global. People are listening all over the world. I hope that answers your question. And thank you for letting me use my globe, because I wasn't sure I'd get any use after it, after we went to Ireland. Is promoting a book considered a business? Bill, I may need you to clarify that a little bit. So a lot of our clients who are authors they're business owners, they're coaches, they're consultants, et cetera, and they have a book as a way to build their brand and to build their credibility and all of that. So you definitely want to go on podcasts to promote your book, but typically, like, we work with the business owner who has a book. We don't usually work with like fiction authors or novelists or children's book authors. So Robbie, hey, Robbie, what if we have divergent topics? Should you have a specific one sheet to list all in one place? I speak about Zoom, low tech solutions for engaging events, and business growth strategies. So Robbie, this is a great question, something we address with a lot of our clients who have multiple topics. If the different topics you have are for very distinctly different audiences, then you would want to have multiple one sheets. But if your topics if you have one kind of general like target audience, but multiple topics, then you would have them all on one sheet. And that's something we can obviously give you more customized advice, but that's the general answer there. Let's get that book a call link in the chat again. Kim is looking for it. interviewconnections.com/book a call. Harriet asks, are podcasts mostly audio? I like video as a medium for more expressiveness. Harriet, I like video too. Yes, most podcasts are audio. However, more often podcast hosts are recording with video on so that they can repurpose the video for YouTube and social media, and they post the audio only interview to their podcast feed. So majority of people will end up just hearing the audio interview. However, they'll record the video and then use that to promote the episode or to put the whole video interview on YouTube. So definitely be ready for video. Marie says, I have distinct niches. Do you help with finding podcasts for unique niches? Yes, we definitely do. Feel free to let me know like who your target audience is. And if there's questions, you can definitely book a call with me because I can address that with you personally. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, there's like a whole bunch of like our client, Jenny, she speaks to like the fandom audiences. She goes to Comic-Cons and I'm like, oh my God, there's so many podcasts with your target audience. It's a specific niche, but there's a huge market. There are over 2 million podcasts. So there's a lot of podcasts out there. Sometimes there's a niche where I'm like I talked to somebody yesterday who sells to office furniture manufacturers. And I was like, I am not sure there's podcasts for that audience. So I'll be honest with you. So feel free to just book a call with me if you want to get clear on if this is the right fit for you. Fertility mindset. Yes, Emily, 100%. We work with a lot of mindset coaches. We can definitely serve clients who are speaking about fertility because there are a lot of podcasts for your target audience. So we can definitely help you. Construction, real estate. Oh yeah, we can definitely help you with these niches. 100%, Marie. So thank you for booking a call. Robbie says, I live stream my interviews to multiple platforms and then share audio only. Yeah, perfect. Absolutely. Any other questions? Just put them in the chat. And I am just keeping an eye on to see if Laura has joined. Not quite yet. She's coming on in about 5 minutes. What other questions do you have either about podcast guesting or about working with interview connections? Just put that in the chat. Brian asked, Jessica, where do you think the podcast industry is headed next year? It seems like when some folks feel like it's saturated, it's not even close. Yeah, Brian, it's so interesting. Like the podcast. So when I started Interview Connections in 2013, the podcast, like I look at, listener stats, like how many people are listening to podcasts, and it had gone like kind of up and down, like mostly raising, but there was some years where it went down. Ever since 2013, the percentage of the population, the number of people listening to podcasts has continued to go up. It has not declined. It's really interesting. Like we went to Podcast Movement this year, which is the industry's largest conference for podcasting. I mean, there's huge companies coming into podcasting. A lot of podcasting businesses are, being acquired. I mean, just yesterday I saw an email that Podcast Magazine is selling their business. Like there is a lot of money coming into podcasting. So I see this industry continuing to expand. So if you're not using it yet, like get in, because it's always great to be an early adopter of a medium, of a strategy that works. When I first started, I remember there were experts who were like, they wouldn't do podcasting because it was like beneath them. But now everyone's starting podcasts, everyone's getting interviewed, is definitely not saturated. Are there any Disney related podcasts? There are about 1 million Disney related podcasts. I think half. No, just kidding. There's a lot of Disney podcasts for sure. Do I help podcast hosts? Yes, we do help podcast hosts. So we do have a service. If you need guests, we can find and book guests for your show. We can also pitch our clients to your podcast. We recommend Produce Your Podcast if you need help editing and producing. Steve asked, what's the process for getting the video clips from the podcast you were on? So after your podcast interview goes live, the host will typically email you and tell you that the interview is live. Every host is different. So some podcast hosts will give you clips. They'll give you little graphics. They'll give you video clips. They'll give you captions that you can copy paste. And some hosts will say, hey, the interview's live. Here it is. So, I mean, some hosts, produce a lot of marketing assets. Some of them don't do any, but you could just get that right from the host. All right. Catherine asked, could you run through the top things that need to be on the podcast one sheet? Yeah, absolutely. So you want to have your bio, and around 200 words is a good length, because you want enough in your bio that the host can get to know you, but it also should be short enough where they could easily read it as an introduction. You want to have 3 to 5 interview topics, and then 3 to 5 interview questions, and then your contact information, website, email, social media, things like that. Anna asked, have you ever heard of big companies sponsoring podcasts? All the time. Lots of big companies are sponsoring podcasts. There's a lot of money coming into podcasting. 100% yes. Peter asked, are you doing everything, like providing what the host wants, sending headshots? So that's a great question. So we are the connector. So we're securing you as a guest. Once we have a host who says, I want to interview Peter, he looks like an amazing guest, We then introduce you to the host, and then you actually schedule the recording. So we are not in our clients' calendars. We secure you as a guest, and then you work directly with the host, or your team works directly with the host to actually schedule the recording. Most of what the host needs is on the one sheet, and we give them the one sheet, but a lot of hosts will ask you to fill out a simple form so they have everything that they need in order to do a great interview with you. All right. Barbara said, had lots of referrals for first 40 podcasts. Lately, I'm having trouble finding relevant podcasts. Is there a saturation point? Barbara, I would say book a call with me if you haven't already, because I'd like to kind of dig in with you personally to figure out, what types of podcasts you've been on. If we can brainstorm like different types of podcasts that you haven't yet thought of that would still get you in front of your target audience. One last question. Brian said one last question. When do you think podcasts become less like a favor and more mutual benefit? Seems like guests are less likely to decline. That's an interesting question. I mean, I think that is, when do podcasts become less like a favor and more of a mutual benefit? I mean, I think podcasts are mutual all around. I think there's always a two-way street with podcast guesting, but I think if it seems like a favor for one side or the other, that just comes down to maybe a mismatch in connection. What do you need to set up a small team? That I think that's not totally relevant for this, but book a call if you have any specific questions about your business. Do we usually have questions ready as a guest, or should the host have questions ready for the interview? So that's, Nikki, where the one sheet comes in. So you want to have a one sheet that you can give the host that they can ask you the questions that are on your one sheet. And then lots of podcast hosts will have their own questions as well. Lots of amazing questions. Any other questions? Sammy just dropped the link. Book a call if you are interested in getting on podcasts and you want Interview Connections to be booking you because you don't want to spend a lot of time researching and identifying podcasts. Book a call to get information on pricing. We do have multiple levels and packages depending on, how long you want to be podcast guesting, how many interviews you want, what your budget is. So just book a call to learn more about that. And we can have a one-on-one conversation either on the phone or Zoom to, just make sure that this is the right fit for you. So the range, you should be prepared to spend around $2,000 a month with a payment plan. And then we have a range of pay in full options as well. Any other questions? Camille, I do a discovery call with my potential podcast guests first. Do people do this normally? Yes, actually, I love pre-calls, and I do. These have become a lot more popular recently. So we do a lot of education with our clients on the value of pre-calls, because sometimes they'll occur to people as like, oh, this is going to take me more time, but it's really valuable to do pre-calls with hosts or discovery calls because you and the host can determine the best topics for that interview to provide the most value. You can break the ice with the host in that pre-call because you want the more chemistry and the more connection you can have with the host on the actual interview that the listeners will be listening to, the better. Peter asks, given your experience, what is the ROI for high ticket service? Meaning if you do 3 months of podcasts, when you would likely see the ROI 6 to 12 months or later. Oh, thank you, Matt. Okay. So actually, this is a perfect question. Laura Wright, do you want to come off mute, Laura?
I do. Hello, my dears. How is everyone?
Amazing. Also, Laura, I think I first want to introduce you to everyone. We've had an incredible last almost 2 hours. I've been talking about you throughout, but Laura is an author, speaker, growth strategist, and master sales coach. Her approach to creating wealth and scaling businesses is simple, effective, and steeped in the absolute belief that sales is love. From being in real estate in 2008 with $500,000 in debt to closing a cool $43 million and then some, she knows the power of transformation. And she is the founder of Epic at Sales and one half of Sold Inc. And she has closed 6+ figures in sales from podcast guesting. And I have brought her here to share with you how she's done it. And I think just given Peter's question, Laura, how do you feel about taking that one? What is the ROI for high ticket service? Meaning if you do 3 months of podcasts, when would you likely see the ROI? So I'll start there.
Okay. Immediately. I don't know if that's the right answer. I guess the right answer would be this. So why I love podcasting, why it's been so effective in my business. And Jess, I have to tell you, I was really thinking about the numbers. It's multi-six. I know where I can see where my money has come, and I wanted to be very careful with my numbers, but I know it's been more than that, because what I see when I get into a podcasting conversation is I'm evaluating, is this person my ideal client? Do they serve my ideal client? I'm creating connection and belief and commitment. And with that lens of seeing that, I usually end up having conversations where I either buy from the person or I sell to the person on the call. And I remember speaking with a podcast host that I got on, and I know it's more than six figures because I sold a six-figure offer to this one person. Side note, you should have a six-figure offer if you want to sell six figures. But I remember talking with him and he was like, you know what, Laura, I'm getting to a funny spot. Every single podcast I host, I either buy from the person or I sell to the person. And I said, so do I. So I think it's a perception change. I look at the host as my ideal client and their audience is a bonus, as opposed to thinking that I just go speak with the host and reach their audience. And my hope is that someone will matriculate. I speed that up. I think the other thing is I build a relationship with the host. Sometimes the host is not a one done, I met you and I buy from you. This is another reason why, just as going back on the numbers, is I was thinking about one client I have right now who's been in my mastermind 3 rotations. Each time is 30,000. I met her. She was maybe one of the first people you got me connected to as a podcast person, but she didn't buy right away. It took her a while of us being engaged and us reaching each other and connecting. So term of ROI, I think it can happen the moment you have your first podcast, but honestly, it's about how you create the relationship with the podcast host.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as I mentioned before, we have a membership site for our clients and we do trainings. We bring in amazing experts, and Laura actually led an incredible training. So you can access that whole training when you become a client. But can you just give a little bit of kind of a teaser of some of the things that you talk about in that training, like how to connect on a podcast and convert them into clients?
Absolutely. So number one is I use my 5 steps to yes that I teach for sales in every single conversation I do. And I'm not saying that lightly. What I mean is I am guiding conversations. So while yes, you are a guest on someone's podcast, I still like to sit in the seat of lead, but I don't lead like me. I lead them. So most people, when you get onto a podcast, you want to feature yourself. You want to be seen as the expert and you want people to come to you. I flip it around. While I can show up and shine and be magnificent, I'm usually trying to advocate for how amazing the host is. I am trying to reposition why they have great conversations, great connections for me, how amazing they are for their audience. When I do that, when I edify them, it engenders us together. It builds a different kind of bond. It is better for their audience. It also makes me shine as opposed to it being me focused. So I think that's a big one. The other thing is with my 5 steps, what I actually do is it's to connect with someone, to listen and learn to find their struggles, to help them guide to their vision, to give them an invitation to work together and to close. I don't attempt to do this all in one conversation when it comes to podcasting. So prior to me being on the podcast, I'm going to go do a little market research. I'm going to find out about them. I'm going to listen to their podcast. I'm going to go see them on social media. So I know a bit about them before I get there. I also like to have a little conversation before we even get going in the recording. I like to have a great conversation while we're recording and I'm paying attention to the questions they're asking because P.S., the questions that a host asks, they want to know the answers to. So if you are able to serve giving them the solve that they're asking for, and sometimes I'll ask these questions like, well, tell me more about your business. Let's ask a specific question that relates to you. When I give them the solve, I just elevate myself as expert, but I am really genuinely giving to them. It has them lean in more. And then I always spend time in green room. So as soon as we're complete with the podcast, I'm usually saying things like, we could have talked forever. This was one of the best calls. And side note, it has to be genuine. It has to be real. I don't do this on every podcast. If I get on, I had one call where I was like, thank God there's no video. I just need to get off because we just didn't jive and that was okay. It happens. But when I do get into the ones where I am connected, engaged, and everything's going, I stay with it. And then I invite them to have that next call.
Yeah, I love that. I think Laura's video froze, but I can still hear you just fine. But Laura, what? Oh no, we lost Laura. Okay. So Peter asked Laura, what is your business? So Laura is she is a coach. So she is a master sales coach for women. She is also an author and a speaker. So that is her business. And then Peter said, that is why I was thinking of being a host, so you can ask the right questions of your prospect without a sales call. Yeah, I mean, it is ideal. Like, okay, Laura's back. All right, Laura. Laura, are you able to unmute yourself?
I can't unmute. Can I? I did.
All right. Matt had the power.
I'm up in the mountains in our beautiful, beautiful ski chalet, and it's lovely. And the internet keeps giving me mic drops inadvertently, where it just kind of goes. But I'm back.
Awesome. Peter was just asking what is your business? And
yes, I'm sales coach and consultant. I love to help people make money. It's one of my favorite things to say.
Yes. Yeah. So we are right at the end here. Laura, is there any final tips or wisdom you want to share with people? Any final words of encouragement for those here on this call who have been, we've got almost 200 people on this call. If they haven't booked their call yet with me, why should they do that?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So my favorite thing in the whole wide world is being interviewed on somebody's podcast. It puts you on platform. It gives you expert status. It gives you collateral that you can share on and on and on. In fact, I have a brand new client to me who one of the things he said before hiring me was, I just went and binged, watched, and listened to all of your podcasts. And I was like, holy crap, that's pretty amazing. But it lives on. So please don't think you have to get immediate ROI in the moment you're doing something. This is a long line marketing moment, but it also has the ability to be most sped up. I think the other really important thing is this. Remember, when you're on a podcast, it is one of the most unique experiences. And what I love about it is it gives the listener the same experience as though they're with you one-to-one. So when you're on a podcast, remember, you're not actually talking to a broad audience. You're speaking to one person. Go be intimate, go be connected, listen to them. And here's what I know about Jessica and her entire team. They care. I know it sounds a little bit lame when you say it, but what their heart and intention is they want to actually put people in the right spots and connect with them. So if you want to explore working with them, it's going to give you access to one of the most powerful tools by being on podcasts. And if you want to be a host or you want to be a guest expert, this is that great place to start and connect. And they're no pressure, no push. Go have the conversation and find out if it's a fit. She'll turn you away if it's not. And I can say that.
I definitely will. It's
because it's not for everybody. Yeah. And if it is the fit, her whole team is going to support you in finding the way to match. This is an amplification product of marketing. It's not the only thing you should do. If you've got stuff that's already working in place and you want it to work even better, adding this feature into your marketing and how you show up is probably one of the most powerful. And you should give yourself the gift of saying yes to looking at this. And I'm going to tell you another little funny thing. And Jess, you may or may not remember this. I actually purchased exactly at this time of year when we decided to say yes together, because she sent me a little message and it was something to the effect of, I think there was a special offer for me to say yes in December, but it really set me in this mode of, am I set up for success for next year? Is this the thing that's going to catapult me forward? And so being able to say yes at this time and just knowing I started the next year with this extra layer of success, I would invite you to look into that for yourself.
Yes. Thank you, Laura. Laura, how can everyone, I know people are dying to learn from you as well. So where can people go online to connect with you, to learn more about what you do?
Yep. It's Laura Wright Official, OFFICIAL.com. And I'm typing it in. I hope I typed it correctly. When you go there, you're going to see that I have a book. I highly recommend you grab it because it's a good way for us to get to know each other. It talks about how to create an income rise. And also, if you want to know anything, if you're a woman, we have Sold Sisters, which is just a really fun project I do with my collaborator and partner, where we help people with the energetics as well as with the strategy. If you're a gentleman, know that I do work with men as well as women privately. And what I like to do is help people create an income rise. I want to see you scale with simplicity and sell with ease. It should make it very easy for you to do what you love and to powerfully receive a lot of money. And if you want any support with that, I'm always available and open, because what I want for you to do is work with Jessica and her team, let them amplify your message. And if you need some support with closing those sales, give me a holler.
Yeah, absolutely. So book your call now. We do have some special offers for those of you who take action by Tuesday night. Now's the time. If you want to be getting interviewed on podcasts in 2023, book your call now, take advantage of some of the special offers that we have, and we'll talk about that on the call. So book your call now. The link is in the chat. It's below this video. If you're watching on the replay page, Laura does a whole 1-hour training in the membership site for Interview Connection. So once you're a client, you can see a whole hour training from her on how to connect on a podcast and convert it into paying clients. So thank you all so much for being here. It was so energizing and inspiring to see so many of you here live. And if you're watching the replay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please book a call with me. Thank you, Laura, for being here. And I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. I cannot wait for all of my calls with you all. So thank you all so much. And we will see you on the call. All right. Bye.
Hi, everyone.